just to give you an idea of some things that PollEverywhere can do. So PollEverywhere is really a real-time, potentially anonymous responses, although you can track if people are submitting PollEverywhere responses from the web as opposed to from their phone, and also making sure you're selecting that only registered participants, so only people in my class are able to answer, so then you can also track it back as far as if you want to grade a multiple choice question in class, or if you want to grade participation, you can do that. Data can also be saved, gathered, and made into a report. So like I kind of pulled up earlier with here are all the things that we grouped together and created. You can also do that in a gradebook report if you want to say, okay, here are all my participation grades for the semester, who was able to check in or who got certain things right. You can do that. You can also weight grades with certain survey options. And you can collaborate with other users in PollEverywhere to share different polls and integrate in Blackboard, Google Slides, and PowerPoint, and integrate via the gradebook. So there are lots of different options that you can select with PollEverywhere, which is helpful for if you're trying to assess different kinds of knowledge, if you want to do something like a competition, so the kind of Kahoot style quizzes, or you can separate users out into groups and have the leaderboard kind of situation if you want to do something like a review and see which groups are doing the best. As well as, so surveys work well if you want to do multiple questions and have them go at their own pace, so something like gaining feedback. And then you can also, so you can grade these two quiz options, the multiple choice and the clickable images. So just being aware of that if you do want to assess students' knowledge, or if you want to take a grade, making sure that it's one of those formats of questions, otherwise it doesn't integrate into PollEverywhere's gradebook. There are lots of other examples that PollEverywhere has down here as well to give you other ideas of ways that they use it or other instructors have used different kinds of PollEverywhere questions. And you can also, there's a lot of customization. You can change the colors. You can also change, so with open-ended questions, so if I wanted a word cloud, if it's something where people are putting up like, what does pharmacist mean to you? That might be a better option than like a cluster, for example, or like a text wall. And you can also choose different kinds of charts depending on what kind of questions you're asking. So it is customizable. But there are also limitations to PollEverywhere. You can only use one poll at a time unless you're adding a sub-user to your account, which does require administrative privileges. There isn't a logic tree function, so if you're having student, skipping certain questions, so if they answered yes to this question, then they get skipped to question number 4, something like that. You're not able to do that in PollEverywhere. It's really more of a live polling thing to get feedback in the moment, as opposed to I want to send out a survey to 100 people. It can also be potentially distracting. So talking to Laura about, there's some issues with, students feel I don't want to have to go onto my phone because I was kind of like in the zone listening to a lecture or engaged, and now I'm on my phone checking my notifications. So I'm distracted in that way. So just knowing that it's not necessarily a cure-all, but a kind of a tool that you can use, and knowing when it's going to be useful. And knowing that there are some limitations with only certain surveys are able to be graded, or certain types of questions are gradable. And we're also working on so there was an issue with some inconsistency between classrooms that we're working on with central IT to make sure all computers are consistent. So on PowerPoint add-ins, and the PollEverywhere add-in is also available. All right.
And right now, PollEverywhere is only for PowerPoint. Does it work for Google Slides?
It also does work for Google Slides. You just have to have under the add-ons PollEverywhere, and then you log in, which in general should be working. If your personal computer hasn't installed the add-on for PowerPoint, for example, you might need to come by Fartech and we can install that for you, but it's definitely possible. Yeah. Cool. So the reports function, I think, is a cool function of PollEverywhere that people don't necessarily know about or utilize often. When I see PollEverywhere, it's usually kind of like a one-off like survey or feedback kind of a tool, which it's useful for, but then you're also able to use this to kind of save this information or take a look at trends. So you can download it as a CSV file, so the gradebook, for example, or you can save it as a PDF. You do have to go to print and then save as PDF to do that, but it is possible. So I made a series of short videos for how do you do these things. If you have questions about how to do that, because I did get a couple questions about, okay, how do I insert a poll? I don't know, I'm not sure how to do that. So just showing you the step-by-step going through these processes, just some common questions. If you guys have other questions you haven't submitted via the Google Slides, feel free to email me. Email is in the very beginning of the slides, and we can kind of figure out a time to sit down and work through those. Cool. So some other ideas, just briefly, because we're coming to the end here. So PollEverywhere, you can take attendance, and I linked a PollEverywhere blog post that shows you how to go about doing that, because it's not an inherent feature. You can have to set up a poll, so you give them an attendance code for the day, and then if they answer it correctly, then they should be there, though it's not foolproof. Obviously, there are ways to get around those things, but just some kind of general guidelines or like practice, for example. So, and also it's a good discussion starting point, doing things like think, pair, share, and then maybe having them anonymously submit what they came up with, or if they're confused, but then not having to say that, you know, I don't understand this concept, and maybe feeling embarrassed, or if it's maybe a more sensitive topic and you don't feel comfortable sharing, or it's difficult for students to feel like they want to interject because they could say the wrong thing, that could potentially be a starting point, but also being aware that you can then, if there is an answer that is not appropriate or is insensitive or is like a teaching moment, then you can also kind of check back and see, okay, they submitted by the web and I can take a look and see as an instructor who said that. So you can have some level of control there, as well as responses over time with the reports function. And this is just kind of an overview of Qualtrics. Qualtrics is like a whole nother beast as far as learning how to use it as a tool, but it does have other capabilities that might be useful to you. It's just differentiating between Qualtrics is a whole different thing than PollEverywhere, though it is also a survey tool, but it might have some capabilities that could be useful for you as far as like research is concerned, or this concept that I found called serious games, kind of designing like walkthroughs, or like, so orienting a game through a survey, like, you know, choose your own adventure kind of thing, that you can implement in the classroom as a learning tool, so for decision making. All right, so that was pretty much all I had for you guys today. I also wanted to give a shout out to everybody who kind of helped inform this a little bit, because I'm super new and I don't have a lot of experience with what you guys are doing in the classroom, especially since we're winding down a little bit. So appreciate all the direction from everybody who helped me out, helped me figure out some of the PollEverywhere add-in stuff, and making sure that that's all consistent for you all, and just kind of feeling out what your needs are. So I appreciate you guys all coming, and if you guys have any feedback for me that you could submit via PollEverywhere, I would appreciate that too, and I can take a look at it, make a report, save it for my own purposes. Thank you guys for coming. Please let me know if you have any other questions.